After a review of the evidence, the committee advised that the clusters of microcephaly and other neurological complications constitute an extraordinary event and a public health threat to other parts of the world. In their view, a coordinated international response is needed to minimize the threat in affected countries and reduce the risk of further international spread.
The Center for Disease Control and Prevention notes there are fewer than 1,000 cases per year. The symptoms are nothing out of the ordinary from any one of 1,000 other ailments. But then let's drop the bomb. There is no vaccine or specific treatment for this disease. It cannot be cured. And it has already left behind a small trail of disaster for children. Zika, it's not Ebola, but the concern over its potential growth is just as alarming as that ailment. And where it has been found, it leaves many scrambling to ensure it doesn't spread globally like wildfire. So let's go ahead and get to it right now. Let's talk a little bit more about exactly what's happening here. And let's welcome in Dr. Patricia Salber, who now has an opportunity to at least bring us up to speed on what has happened here today. Dr. Salber, the news today is a little bit frightening. The Zika virus has been declared a global health emergency by the World Health Organization. Does this not tell us then they simply do not want to take the chance of making the mistakes and the slow mistakes maybe that were made with regard to Ebola?
Well, I think that's really clear. Dr. Chan even said as much, that she didn't want to take a chance. And I think unlike Ebola, where the problem was that people who got infected died, the problem here is that a lot of people get infected, but the only people really, or the primary people who are at risk, are the fetuses of women who are pregnant when they get infected. And they're at risk to develop something called microcephaly, which is a small head and a small brain that oftentimes has very severe neurologic disability.
How did this sneak up on us? Because this, according to the New York Times and other organizations, took us by surprise.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The virus has been around for a long time. It was identified in the 40s. It was mainly in Africa, and then they think it spread to South America by a visitor, I think, to the World Cup in 2014. And one of the things that people aren't talking about as much, because the consequences to the fetus are so severe. By the way, that link is not definitively proved. It's only strongly suggested right now. But most people, 80% of people who get this virus, have no symptoms.
When you mention the World Cup, it then brings to mind that Brazil is getting ready. Brazil is ground zero in this case right now, and they are getting ready to host the Summer Olympic Games where the world will be there. That in itself just has to raise so many red flags here. Do you think it's possible? And again, I know you're not a sports expert here, but if this disease is spreading, if they can't control it, if they can't shut it down at least a little bit, doesn't it make common sense then to say we can't have an Olympic Games? You can't take a chance letting something like this spread globally.
Well, first of all, I mean, it already has spread like wildfire. It's unlikely that we're going to have the same kind of spread in the U.S. for a variety of reasons, because of climate, because we live farther apart, we have air conditioning and so forth. But with respect to the Olympics, again, if you're not pregnant, for the overwhelming number of people who get infected with this virus, it's just a mild viral syndrome, and 80% have no symptoms whatsoever. So it's possible, and we'll know a lot more by the time the Olympics come around, but it's possible that the safety measure is to just say pregnant women shouldn't go. And if you are a woman of childbearing years and you want to go, that you be sure you're maximally protected against pregnancy, birth control pills or your method of choice, and that would be enough to keep the broad population of people visiting Brazil for the games safe. I
wouldn't let my wife or my family go near Brazil right now, even with the possibility of this happening. It is frightening. Dr. Patricia Salber, I want to thank you so much for giving us some common sense here. We will stay in touch and we'll follow up on this. Now, another health concern from a global sense deals with shock over money. Do president and presidential candidates know really what they're talking about? Next on The Hardline.